Almost on.
Almost on, not quite.
Not quite 7, and I'm not quite ready.
Yeah.
Oh, you're on.
We are. There we go.
That giggle was loud.
Very good. Now, good evening and welcome to the January 23rd, 2019 meeting of the Chelmsford Planning Board. We are being recorded by Chelmsford Telemedia, so as you all know. And let's see. First item up, we have a relatively short agenda tonight. The first item is Article 1 that's been proposed for the special town meeting that's taking place on the 4th of February. And we have a legal notice to read on that, if you would, Tim.
The Chelmsford Planning Board will conduct a public hearing pursuant GL Chapter 40A, Section 5 on Wednesday, January 23rd, 2018 at 7 p.m. at the town offices located at 50 Billerica Road, Chelmsford, Mass. 01824, for the purposes of receiving public comment on the following 3 warrant articles. To amend Article 3, Use Regulations, Section 195-6, Accessory Uses, Paragraph E, Animals accessory to dwellings for purposes removing the existing 40,000 square foot lot area requirement for small animals, including game birds. Copies of the proposed amendments are available for review during normal business hours at the office of the town clerk and the office of the planning board. Town offices 50 Billerica Road, Chelmsford, Mass. 01824. Per order, Mike Raisback, Chair.
Thank you. All right, before we get going on this, let me, mostly for the audience at home, give a little bit of history of how we got here. Back in the summer, we got a request from the Board of Health to make a change to this area in the bylaws to eliminate the 40,000 square foot requirement for keeping of small animals. It had been come as a surprise to a number of people, including apparently some people in the Board of Health, that limit was there, and a number of permits had been given in violation of that requirement. And so the obvious thing to do, I think, at least what the Board of Health thought at the time, was to remove that restriction. And we said we would, and we put together an article for them, and then some turmoil ensued, and they set down a path of making some modifications, fairly substantial ones, to the regulations, to the health regulations, and they asked us to pull it for the time being, which we did. They have now passed a set of regulations, and so we're bringing this back. Hello? There we go. I understand there's been an informal request, at least, to do this, but in any case, we're bringing it up again because it gets a little complex if you start regulating the same stuff in 2 places, and that's exactly what's going on now. So, with that as the basic, the landscape around this, we'll be having a public hearing on it, but before we formally open that up, I want to see if anybody on the board has any comment they want to make. Otherwise, I'll just open it up to the public, and we'll listen to people.
Sounds good.
Good? Good. All good? Okay, with that said, this is a public hearing.
Got to read the legal notice.
Oh, we have read it.
We did.
Oh, you did.
We already read the legal notice. This is a public hearing, and all the public is invited to speak, and we welcome you if you want to say something on this article, one way or the other. Step up and identify yourself and where you live, and go.
Hi, I'm Bob Myers, Precinct 6. I don't know if anyone cares about that. So I just wanted to say something about the this proposed article. To be clear, what it's doing is it's specifying large animals only is going to be under the purview of planning board or zoning.
Mm-hmm.
And this is removing the zoning board from having anything to do with small animals.
That is correct.
Okay. See, I don't think that's a very good idea, and I'll tell you why. what you're doing is you're going to put it all onto the Board of Health. They're going to be responsible for governance of small animals, I guess, in essence.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what they did is, in their new regulations, they have a section for non-conforming pre-existing permits. And this section will allow the Board of Health to grant a permit to anyone who doesn't comply with any of their regulations. There's going to be no setbacks, no distance from water. So basically what you're doing with this, by taking it out of the planning board, you're removing all regulations, because anyone can go and get a non-conforming pre-existing permit, whether they meet any zoning or setbacks at all.
Okay, that, if they are pre-existing.
Yes.
This does not include people who do not have permits yet, or?
That's correct.
Okay.
And the problems that have happened in town with the rats, as we're all aware of, were caused by people who had existing permits. So the people who caused the problem in my area of town would be able to comply and get a non-conforming pre-existing permit, because they would not have to satisfy any of the setbacks that are specified in the Board of Health regulations. So basically, we're taking all the zoning and just getting rid of it. And I think that's a terrible thing to do.
Okay.
So, also, another thing that I noticed, there's no regulations as to the size of animal coops or barns or anything like that. So, does this board plan on putting in any kind of restrictions as to the size of these structures?
It's certainly not under this.
No.
I'd be surprised if anybody would build a very large structure for a relatively small number of small animals, but.
Yeah, because I think when you look at most of these small animal structures, they're not exactly attractive. And I know that the Board of Health requires that they're in the backyard.
Yeah.
But then again, if someone gets a non-conforming pre-existing permit exemption, they can have it wherever they have it. So I think it's a bad idea for this planning board to just throw out all of the zoning requirements.
Okay, so could you help us a bit with the purpose here? Is the purpose a purpose rooted in health and sanitation, or is it a purpose rooted in aesthetics?
I think they're both at play here. Yeah. So I think,
okay.
I don't, given the health problems, the rat infestation problems that we've had, by removing zoning, now you're just setting it up for the Board of Health to grant a non-conforming permit, and we're right back where we started from, and nothing will ever get solved. So I would ask that the planning board put in place reasonable setbacks for the keeping of small animals, and that they not strike that entire section.
Okay, understood. Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak on this? Yeah.
Good evening. Dottie Jones, 23 Buckman Drive. Going back to October town meeting, Article 17, which was the article that was withdrawn at the very last moment. That article, to my recollection, was to hold the 40,000 square feet in place as it stood.
No.
No, it was, I believe, it was 20, and then we actually considered 15 at one point. We were in the process of working out fine points when the Board of Health asked us to withdraw the article, but I believe it was at 20,000.
Okay, so
published.
we as residents were going the other way, and we had hoped to see it stay at 40. Going into that town meeting, we had the backing of all of the boards and all of the committees in town agreeing to the 40,000, because that's all that we have in our head is the 40,000. We didn't want that changed. So it's my understanding as of today, because nothing happened in October, that bylaw is still in place.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And that is written, as of today, it's still written
40,000.
at 40,000.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Just wanted to clear
Yep.
that up. Okay.
I know, it gets a bit complex. There was a lot going on
Okay,
in the
thank you.
process of this.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to say a word? Oh.
Good evening. Laura McLeod, 56 Winter Street. And I just wanted to come up and just make a couple of general comments as far as the 40,000 square feet. Excuse me. Chickens only need 2 square feet per bird for a coop and 4 square feet per bird for a run. 40,000 square feet is ludicrous. It's crazy. It makes no sense whatsoever. And small animals doesn't just cover chickens.
Yeah.
It would cover dogs, and it would cover cats.
A couple of notes. It doesn't cover dogs and cats, at least not indoor cats. However, it does cover rabbits.
And rabbits.
And anything that you would keep in a cage outside that's, below, say, 35, 25 pounds, whatever, would be covered by this.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
I'm just, I'm obviously a chicken owner.
Yeah.
I've been a chicken owner for quite a long time. And just for the record, there's never been rats in my neighborhood. We've never had an incident. We've never had a complaint. And we're talking 12 plus years of having chickens. I'm talking 5 chickens. The most I think maybe we've had is 8. So I think the 40,000 square feet, I really don't think it pertains to having backyard chickens.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Somebody else in the, hi.
Hi, I'm Lisa Bagulitz. I'm the owner of the Chelmsford Agway. I just want to make my statement that I think 40,000 is way too much required space for chickens. They don't need that much room. They're enclosed. They're in a pen. I think the problem with the rodents and all that had more to do with trash and not taking care of it and having food out and things like that that will attract rats. And as the owner of the Agway, I always make sure that if people are going to have chickens and they're going to get them from our store and they're going to be buying the feed from our store, I make sure they're well educated. Every year, I offer free seminars on how to raise chickens, how to do it correctly, how to be sanitary, how to do everything right, keep it clean. Definitely lock up all the food, make sure nothing could get at it, the chicken feed, hang it high. I cover all of that. I've had chickens myself for years and years and never seen any rodents. I mean, I think the other problem didn't even have to do with the size of the lot, anything. It had to do more with how they had things out, stored, there was garbage, things like that. It had nothing to do with chickens. So that's just my say. I think that it really, and it's actually a point there too, we're a small business in town. It is affecting us really badly. Normally, I had my chicken seminar, my free one, January 12th. Normally, we get at least 50 people to come to it. I had 5 on January 12th, and 4 of them were Westford residents. Everyone in Chelmsford's afraid to even get chickens, and it's sad. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to do. You have fresh eggs. The big thing now, I mean, it seems to be growing more in towns instead of less as people want to have a hand in the food they're eating, more sustainable. It just seems like we're going the opposite way. I mean, I already did a seminar last week in Wayland about raising chickens. Bedford asked me to do their adult ed on that. They want to encourage it in town. It just seems like Chelmsford's going the other way and discouraging it with this lot size that most people don't have in town. So, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? There's a familiar face.
Who's that?
You know who she is?
No.
Ever seen her?
Poor Henry, he's afraid what I'm going to say.
Always.
I just want to say that we've had unusual rain, lots of water. There was a building in the center of town that was taken down that went over the brook. So what was living in that building got displaced. So most of the rat problem, we're not the only town. So the rats usually use the waterways to get around. I just want to make that out there so people have an idea of how some of this stuff can happen. Now, we have some chickens. We've never had a rat problem. Henry's family had 10,000 birds in one of the barns at our place. They had egg roots through Lowell. And I also want to mention that the whole town is zoned agriculture. Don't take Chelmsford history away by secluding people to only 40,000 square feet. That's it.
Thanks. Thank you very much. We got another one.
Pam Pelletier, Meadowbrook Road. The 40,000 square feet, if it's in a cage, who cares how big your land is, as long as the land's bigger than your cage. For bunny chickens, they all have to be where they can't get out of. So I don't understand why size matters in this case. For pre-existing, we are still being put under the gun. Even though I have a pre-existing permit, I still have to meet all the new laws they're coming up with. If I'm not 30 from the back and 25 from here, my barn's on the side of my house, they're gonna make me get rid of my chickens. So you're still winning, even though I've never had a rat in my yard. So we still have laws we have to meet. Because everyone now thinks chickens cause rats. My neighbor has jumped on the bandwagon. We've never seen a rat on Meadowbrook Road. So, just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Good evening. Laurie Myers, 7 Pine Hill Avenue. I don't think this is about winning. I think this is about common sense regulations in zoning that take into account people's, I guess, people wanting to own chickens. I don't think anybody's saying to keep it so strict so nobody can have chickens. I'm just saying, or what we're saying is that if you're going to do it in a way where you're not shoving chickens down people's throats, and keep it a distance away so that we can still enjoy our neighborhood without dealing with, the issues that could come along with this. Most people are good chicken owners, but if you have people who are not, it can cause a real problem. So I'm just asking this board, and my husband just spoke about, the chicken coops, and there being really no regulations around the chickens' coops or the size of them. I think that really needs to be taken into consideration. I think the proximity to water needs to be taken into consideration. We're all going to be charged an extra $40 on our water bill because of our waterways being polluted. And justifiably, we should be keeping them clean. But we should be also be thinking about that before adding more food sources, more animals closer to proximity of water. And, again, this isn't about winning. This is about common sense. And, I'm sure if we all put our heads together, we can come up with something that kind of makes, most people happy.
Thank you. Hey, George.
Mr. Chairman, George Zaharoulis, planning board members. I don't own chickens, and I've read this and I've seen the bylaws. I think that this is a good change, the way you have it presented here. As far as the chickens go, the Board of Health is the permit granting authority. They'll have their rules. They will have guidelines for anybody that applies for a permit to have chickens. It's easier for them to amend their rules or change their rules because, as you know, the bylaws have to go to town meeting, 2/3 change. It's easier for them to amend their rules and also enforce their rules, because if they find a violation of their rules, they can pull a permit, and then you're out. So I think by leaving it changing it the way you have it here, and then let the Board of Health create their rules that work, I think that's the right thing to do here. I think to put it more into the bylaw, and you're going to see another version of this later at another meeting, I guess. I understand what they're trying to do, but I think the Board of Health is the right place to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Would anybody else like to? Got another one.
Hi there, my name is Alexander Melville from 6 Monmouth Street off of River Neck Road. And I want to say it's great that you guys are separating what the Board of Health requires from what all the other regulations are. In particular, in my case, I have several non-residential lots near my yard. And so me currently, who I am a chicken owner, on a 1/4 acre, which is about 13,000 square feet, I can't have chickens, but for no good reason, because I'm at least 100 feet from my nearest neighbor. And so removing the requirements for the square footage is really helpful, beneficial to me, and I think to the community at large, because, you know, aside from the fresh and healthy eggs, you know, they're great learning opportunity and responsibility learning tool for my kids and for other people. And it's a community builder, right? I mean, you know, you have extra eggs. What do you do with them? You don't just throw them out the window, right? You give them to your neighbor or bring them to the farmer's market or something like that at the local Agway. Sorry, guys. So I just think it's great that you guys are opening up this possibility to have more local food sources in town. You know, getting a little more responsibility for what we put inside our bodies and bringing the community even a little bit closer together. So easy to lose sight of that when you can just go to the supermarket and buy whatever the heck you want. But, you know, there's something to be said for keeping things local. And I really appreciate you guys empowering us as the citizens to do that. So thank you again for coming up with this.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Oh, we got another.
Steve Augustino, 6 Pine Hill Ave. We have a non-conforming pre-existing permit. Correct me if I'm wrong, the town can't give out pre-existing non-conforming permits. I don't know. We've had chickens for a few years. We've had Bain Pest Control. We've had assessments. We have a program. I live on the backside of Buckman Ave where the rat issue was. I believe there was a rat issue on Buckman Ave. Maybe not as bad as it was put out there to be. We've had chickens for probably 4 years. Never had a rat, never had a burrow, have had assessments, and do have pest control. All our food is kept in tin, closed containers, away from our coops. I have one neighbor that can see my coop. I'm probably 100 feet from any of our other neighbors. We've never had an issue with anything, really, in the years that we've had chickens. That's it. I think this is good, and I think it would allow a lot more people to experience chickens.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Like another word? I don't see anybody else. How about it?
I have a couple of invoices here I got from my dealership. A couple of times last year, rats got into my car and chewed my wires, so I had to get it towed. Yeah. I really can't go back to living like that. Where is the protection for the people who don't own chickens? We need planning board zoning protection. You know, as chicken ownership grows, and I'm certainly not opposed to chickens, but you have to have them on a lot size that's sufficient to handle them. And there has to be setbacks from water, because every meeting we've ever had, whether it was Board of Health, people speaking on behalf of chickens or against chickens, everyone agrees the water is the problem. And nowhere in your proposal is there any setback from water required. And I think that's very important. Something that protects us. Because I really can't have my car towed every time a rat decides to go crazy.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
We've talked about particularly chickens, although this would involve rabbits and other things. And we've talked about rats. And the strong implication has been that the small animals are somehow causing the rat problem. But do you have anything of substance? If you had like an investigator or a control person or a pest control person actually make the strong connection there? I haven't seen it.
Well, the connection that I'm making is before people started keeping chickens, there were no rats. And now after a couple of years of chicken ownership, now we've got a rat problem. So
that's the relationship. I just wanted to be clear what it was coming from.
yes, this is coming from me noticing a rat problem in the neighborhood, and also that coincides with increased chicken ownership.
Understood. Because I would point out to you that there have been rat problems all over the state this year. We had a very lush summer. Shirley had a huge problem. I hear they're even having some troubles down at Hart Pond. I haven't confirmed this. I know Boston had far more problems than usual, and they don't have a lot of chickens. So there's been a rat and rodent problem this year. I mean, look at the number of squirrels. Look at the number of rabbits. I've got rabbits hopping across my driveway in January. I mean, it must be pretty chilly rabbits. They're wild ones, by the way, not domestic as far as I know. So while there clearly has been a rat issue, it's not completely clear, at least to me, that it's related to the small animals. I know some people probably share that. I was wondering if there was anything, there's a little more substantive or scientific that we could.
Other than finding rats underneath my car when I trap them?
Yeah,
it's not scientific.
We know you had rats.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And another thing, a woman mentioned that Chelmsford is all agricultural, but I'd like to correct that Chelmsford is a suburban town and has been for 40 years.
That is.
And we have a lot of small lots in town, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't be allowed to own chickens, but I do think they should have a certain amount of setback and a certain lot size to be able to have chickens.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question of this speaker?
Yes.
How did you determine that your wire damage was from rats as opposed to squirrels?
Under the dealership's recommendation, he said that I should get those flat glue rat traps and put them on the flat surfaces underneath my car. And when I did that, I was able to catch rats stuck to it.
Can I ask you one
Yeah,
more
but
question?
you wouldn't catch squirrels on those.
Pardon me?
But you would not catch squirrels on them because they're too big to be sticking to those pads.
Well, I did not catch squirrels or chipmunks.
Yeah.
They were rats, unfortunately.
Can I ask you another question? What type of
Yes,
car
sir.
was it?
Pardon me?
What type of car was it?
A Mazda?
Because I know that several manufacturers have a class action lawsuit against them now because they've been using a soy-based.
I wouldn't know if my wires are soy-based or not.
No, it wouldn't be your wires, it'd be the insulation. I know there is a lawsuit going on because I know two people in Carlisle that have had the same issue. One of them was an employee of mine. He had to have his car repaired.
What type of car was it?
I believe it was a Mazda.
So the problem is not the chickens, it's my car is the problem,
No,
is what you're saying.
the problem is the manufacturer put a soy-based
An edible
insulation in the car.
Could mean you got a real good shot.
Now, my son has been driving a Mazda for 10 years now, and he's never had his wires chewed.
Only certain models. I'm not going to argue it with you.
I think
I'm not
that's-
going to argue with you. If you Google it, you may find that you may have a way of recouping your money. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before, so I'm not really sure what to say. All I can tell you is that I trapped rats inside my car,
Inside?
under the hood.
Oh,
They
but
can
that's
do a
not
lot
inside,
of damage. There's
yeah.
no question about that.
Thank you.
So can squirrels.
Yeah,
Okay, that's interesting.
yeah, that is interesting.
Soy-based insulation.
Yeah.
It might be a way to get some of the stuff paid for by somebody else. Is there anybody else who would like to? Len?
Glenn Diggs, 220 Wellman Avenue. I'm a member of the Board of Selectmen, but I'm here by myself, not representing the board. I'd just like to say that I want to agree with the comments presented by George earlier. I don't think anyone on the board is saying that you believe that 40,000 or 30,000 or 20,000. All you're saying is that the right place for these rules to be set is at the Board of Health. And simply that. And that's what your article addresses, that simply, if they want to set it at 40,000 square feet and that's what should be done, then that's fine. It's within their jurisdiction to do so. I grew up in Somerville, but I had a common yard with my uncle, and he had 25 chickens. And you wouldn't expect them in Somerville, but there was never any complaints, and they were there for 20 years that I lived there. So I respect the people in town wanting to have chickens. You know, I respect the idea that they don't need to have 40,000 square feet. I respect the idea that the Board of Health is the people who should investigate what the legitimate, fair rules in the town should be. And therefore, I support your wanting to get out of this square footage because I don't think it's within your expertise and placing it where it does belong. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Okay. Anybody else? All right, well, I'll tell you what. Rather than close the hearing right at this point, let's have some conversation amongst the board, then perhaps people will want to make an additional comment, and then we can close it at that point. I don't know.
I'm curious to know from planning board perspective, are we concerned at all that the Board of Health would not regulate the chickens?
They already have.
I know, but are we,
13 pages of regulation.
right,
Chickens
but
and
I think that
rabbits, by the way.
To
and
enforce
other
the
things.
regulations that they have drafted.
Well, I would hope.
I mean, are we concerned as a board that they would not? I mean, there's
No,
been some question whether or not they would tonight by some of the presenters.
I have no reason to doubt that they would enforce their regulations. I mean, we are actually more limited than they are. They've got a couple of inspector people that do that kind of thing. I mean, all we've got's the building department, and they really have a lot of other different kinds of things to worry about.
Yeah. So, Mike, you made a comment a while ago regarding 40,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And that, does it really matter if you have a setback, if you have 40,000, 35, 30,000 square feet? I mean, you still have a setback.
Doesn't matter. Well, and then you can talk about the setbacks. Some of the setbacks that have been proposed are utterly impossible on anything less than about 30,000 square feet. I mean, so you can manage this with setback. You can manage it with square footage. There are a lot of ways.
With that being said,
and square footage is pretty crude.
With that being said, 80% of the houses in the town are less than 40,000 square feet. They're, you know what I mean? So you're limiting 20% of the town to be able to utilize a 40,000 square foot.
Yeah.
Because the other ones just don't have it. We did the thing on the zoning, and 80% of the houses are non-conforming in this town.
Yep.
And we have 40,000 square foot zoning on most of it. A lot of it is 20,000 square foot.
Or less.
40 and 60.
Or less,
Yeah,
right.
or less.
That's why we have the ability for a Board of Appeals and other people that they can do something, which is basically what the Board of Health is trying to do with their regulation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I have comments. I think this really is about common sense regulations. And, you know, I look at this clause, and not too long ago, town meeting determined that it was okay to have 2 horses or cattle on 40,000 square feet. And when I think about the significance, you know, just the sheer size, the waste products, the food products of 2 horses, and compare that with however many chickens somebody's going to put on their lot, we're not talking apples and oranges here. I mean, having any kind of size restriction compared with those 2 horses on a town lot, it is just not common sense. If we remove this size restriction, we really have not deregulated the impact of small animals within the zoning codes and the other town bylaws. So you still have setback restrictions for accessory structures. So anything that is a coop housing still comes under an accessory structure. It's either a significant large accessory structure or it's a shed-size accessory structure, each of which have their own setback rules. We have the dimensional regulations within the zoning regs. Article 4, dimensional regs 195.9 for conformity. There are capabilities to reduce those setbacks a bit based on zoning board of appeals. But primarily it goes by the dimensional regulation tables. We have an article, it's Article 8, Environmental Protection Standards within the zoning standards. And that addresses water quality, it addresses air quality, and it addresses noise. And within the constraints of the noise regulations, I'll be hanged if I see where common sense requires you to individually regulate roosters. We already have a noise standard. We have a solid waste requirements. And we also have a requirement within those environmental protection standards within the zoning regs that all materials which may be edible by or attractive to rodents or insects shall, when stored indoors or outdoors, be stored in tightly closed containers. We're addressing it. It's already able to be enforced by the building inspector. The floodplain restrictions give uses within the acceptable uses within the floodplain, setbacks, and exceptions to those setback regulations. And one of the exceptions is farming. There's no setbacks in there from the floodplain for farming applications. They just don't require it. Why should we require it in the zoning regs if the floodplain portions don't require it? The animal regulations, the only thing they address is dogs. And in terms of noise from dogs, it's regulated if the dog's barking continuously for over 30 minutes. I fail to see how that applies to a rooster that occasionally crows. And it applies to dog waste removal. And the only requirement there is to keep it off other people's property. You don't have to pick it up off your own. So this whole brouhaha has been put forward because a community had a rat problem, a rodent problem this year. And we all know that it's been a tough year in terms of rodents because of the water levels. I mean, all communities have had problems. But that doesn't diminish the fact that one of our communities had some really significant problems. The concern I have is that we're not attacking this with the rodent control regulation. If we were writing a rodent control regulation, it would address animal foods, control of animal foods. It would ban bird feeders. It would require that all wastes in your yard be picked up, not just chicken wastes. Basically, you'd have to keep your dog out of your own yard. It would require metal trash cans throughout town and not plastic ones because the rats will eat through them. That's one of their sources of food. It would require that all of the water sources in our town be contained underground or within channels that had straight walls that the rats can't get into. And the fact is we promote waterways in town. We promote are wetlands. To say that I got to get rid of my chicken water feeder at the same time that I am protecting the existence of the stream that goes by my property because my chicken water feeder promotes rats isn't common sense regulation. Rodents in whatever form are part of our environment. It's not the fact that they exist. They are a piece of our ecological system. It's when something happens out of the ordinary in a particular place that allows an overabundance of one particular species. And that's what we had happen in a particular neighborhood this summer. You need to look at all the sources, not just a single source that somebody wants to blame for their own problems. You know, I've listened to the neighbors, and I really feel for them and feel for the problems they've had. But when I have a neighbor that comes up and says, the rats went away when my neighbor got rid of her chickens, but I had to get rid of my bird feeders in my garden because the rats were there. And I'm thinking, but don't you realize that your bird feeders and your garden were also feeding those rats and were causing that rat population? It's not just small animals that cause rodents. It's all the different things we do that we would have to control if we truly wanted to control our rodent population. These regulations have been picking on one particular population to solve a single neighborhood problem. They are negatively affecting people across our town, and they are absolutely in opposition to the agricultural community that we say we are in our master plan, in our cultural preservation plan, at the very beginning of the principles of our zoning regulations. We believe, whether it's still true or not, we believe that we have an agricultural heritage that we want to preserve. An agricultural heritage doesn't just mean that a few people in town with a lot of land can make a living through agriculture. It means that residents across town can raise their own food and know what's in it. Thank you.
Mike, Tim?
The only question I have is who suggests, is it the Board of Health that would suggest that these small animals stay on their own property instead of roaming the neighborhood? Who handles that? Is that the Board of Health, if this went through?
That probably would be, but let me point out that anybody with an animal of that sort is not going to have that animal very long if they let him outside the fence with all the coyotes and everything else that we've
they
got.
won't
Hawks
survive.
even. The hawks will get inside your fence.
They just won't survive.
Yeah, they just wouldn't survive. So you absolutely have to.
So is it the Board of Health? Because it does happen.
Well, they occasionally get out just as dogs get off their leash.
Right.
I chased a very nice bulldog today and returned him to 8 Douglas.
We do have an animal control officer.
Yeah, we do.
Actually,
So that falls under
Yeah,
that.
that's his.
It's under animal control.
Be his
Under
purview, I
animal
would
control.
think.
That's all I have.
Thanks, Mike. Tim?
I'm in favor of the Board of Health being in charge of the application and restrictions. So.
Anybody else?
I think it's been in the Board of Health's hands for a few years. It's always been there. They got to work out the regulations.
Yeah.
You can't have two boards fighting over regulations that it just gets mucked up.
Hank, you got any thoughts?
I just had a question with why we're going to regulate zoning for large animals and not game birds. I was thinking 20,000 for the game birds, but
Okay.
Why are we doing large animals if we're getting out of the animal business?
I think basically because it was already, it was in the zoning bylaws already, and the larger animals pose perhaps a different set of problems. I mean, we could, but at this point, we've been focused on just one particular set of problems, that being the small animals, the rabbits, the chickens, things like that.
Well, I looked at the Board of Health's plan and their setbacks, and
Yeah.
if you follow the setbacks, you're gonna need at least 20,000 square feet.
Yeah.
It's 25 from the property line, 50 from the water.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Anybody else? You want to venture into this?
I just got a text that I have a bat in my house.
Where's the regulations for
Yeah,
bats?
where's the bat? Yeah.
Well, I did. I'm going to make one
there
more
are
comment
regs
here.
for bats and they're
or a
protective.
couple of more small comments just to give some perspective, because I actually went and did a little research, which is what we're supposed to do when we're passing rules or making changes. In terms of waste, 10 chickens is about equal to one 65-pound dog, if you look at it by weight. And in fact, that assumes that it hasn't dried. When it dries, it's more like 20 chickens to a 65-pound dog. Just to give a perspective, because sometimes when you say chickens or rabbits or whatever it is, it's a little bit hard to measure in most people's minds just exactly what impact that means. It's as comparable to a dog or two on somebody's property in terms of that kind of problem, probably also in terms of noise.
Not even.
Not even? Well,
No.
I don't know about that.
No,
It depends on your neighbor's dog.
Well, that's it. The
Yeah.
decibel level for chickens is a lot lower than for a dog.
All right.
It's just a lot less noise.
Anybody else want, what I'd like to do is give people one more shot at the microphone. Otherwise, I guess we're prepared to close the hearing and make a recommendation one way or the other.
Make a motion to close the public hearing if.
Okay. Moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right.
Move to endorse the article.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any conversation on it? That, hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. All that means is that it goes to town meeting with a recommendation on it. That doesn't mean any more than that. We couldn't keep it off or put it on by ourselves in any case, so. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody that came down to speak. That's what it's about. Fun with democracy. Thank you. Okay, next item up. Well, I'll tell you what, let's give it like a 2-minute breather and let people clear out.
If you're giving it 2 minutes, I'm gonna grab some water.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm taking.
They may have.
I found out. Takes another one.
Okay, I think it's time for us to blast forward.
Yeah, please.
Duty over there? Yeah.
All right, have we got, who are we missing? Henry will be back in a second. You can go ahead and set up. We'll be doing 135 Pine Hill.
So I have your drawings that you sent in, if you want to ask me which one would you prefer, just the full site plan?
Yeah, just the full site plan would be fine. And then probably go to,
Henry's not
No.
Henry, you recusing on this?
Yeah, it's illegal.
Okay.
Let
the record
Henry
show.
has to, yeah. Yeah, it's his project.
It's his project, that's right, it is. I forgot about that.
Exactly.
Note that Henry's recused on this.
He's already told me, 7:45. Is there any certain picture you want up
If you
there?
want to go to page 4 of the PDF,
Oh.
and if you do a full size, that should work.
Colleen, can I charge this on the run?
One more.
Actually, you can. The charges are right behind you.
Let's go one more. Page 5 instead.
Or you can grab a new one, but you'll have to open it yourself.
No.
One more. Page
One more?
5,
Oh, I'm
sorry.
sorry.
No, that was me.
Did I miss it?
Oh, well, yeah, back up. It was page 5. It's
Okay.
a site plan. It's a blown-up site plan.
All right, so we have everybody who is going to be sitting on this
Right
matter.
There you go.
Here, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 6 of us, which should be enough.
Did you get one?
Okay.
I'd have to have something to plug it into.
You can use mine.
And it's,
And,
Bullshit.
and
don't.
let the record show that Don went home to chase a bat, which, you know, I bet he got a
Are they
panic
rodents?
phone
I think
call.
he's still there. His stuff's right there.
He's in the building.
He's in the building, but he's, may have not made it out yet.
they have to be plugged into something.
It's possible he may live here.
Yeah, that's right.
You want me to read these letters while we're waiting?
Yeah,
or-
why don't you go ahead? These are the letters on 135 Pine Hill.
The Chelmsford Planning Board will conduct a public hearing on Wednesday, January 23rd, 2019 at 7 p.m. at the Chelmsford Town offices located to consider the application submitted by ARCOR LLC for a property located at 135 Pine Hill Road. Property is located in RB Single Residence District. The project proposes a commercial scale solar photovoltaic facility and associated site improvements. Applicant requests approval per Article 13A zoning permit, commercial solar photovoltaic facility, and any other relief that may be deemed necessary. Copies of the proposal are available in Community Development, Town Offices 50 Billerica Road, and may be viewed Monday through Friday, 9 to 4 p.m. All interested parties invited to comment in writing or may present any relevant information for consideration at the public hearing on Wednesday, January 23rd, 2019, per Mike Raceback. Police Department, no comments. Center Water, no comments. Engineering, no comments. Fire Department has a letter. Dear members of the board, in regards to the proposed solar field at 135 Pine Hill Road, this office finds the following. I've spoken to the project contact, Bradley Parsons, PE of All Points Technology. As currently proposed, the fire department access and turnaround for this proposal appears inadequate. However, Mr. Parsons agreed to update the plan so that it provides for appropriate fire department apparatus access and turnaround. Any roadway shall be capable of supporting the weight of CFD Ladder 1 or 42 tons. The applicant shall develop a plan to maintain landscaping around the array so that the landscaping and brush does not pose a hazard in the event of a brush fire. Upon completion of construction, the developer shall maintain a Knox box lock access system to facilitate emergency access to the site by the fire department. Also, upon completion, the developer shall provide training to the members of the Chelmsford Fire Department in regards to the facility operations and emergency response. Please coordinate with the fire prevention officers for scheduling of any of the training sessions. The applicant must submit an application to the Town of Chelmsford E91 Committee for address through its coordinator, the town clerk. This office would approve of this plan with these conditions, and I ask the board to make this letter part of the approval process. Respectfully, Daniel J. Katsufis. And that is it.
Thank you. You are?
Mr. Chairman, Planning Board, my name is Brad Parsons. I am PE with All Points Technology Corporation. I'm here on behalf of Arcor LLC to present the project. The project is Strawberry Solar Farm LLC. It's a 1.08 megawatt DC, 875 kilowatt AC solar array. I'll say solar array so I don't have to say photovoltaic numerous times. It is located on the northern portion of Mr. Parley's 15.6 acre parcel at 135 Pine Hill Road. The solar array takes up approximately 4 acres of that parcel. It will be accessed through Mr. Parley's existing driveway from 135 Pine Hill Road up into the back rear of the yard that exists today. The existing drive will be extended slightly to the north where it stops. And I did discuss the turnaround with the fire department. You can kind of see right here is the where the short turnaround is now. Take that at a little bit of an angle and extend it out about 45 feet to accommodate the ladder truck. We have enough heading up this side that they'll be able to kind of pull in and back up into one of those spaces to be able to turn around and get out. And we'll run the turning movement. I talked to Dan about that. We'll run the turning movement and be able to show that. And we can even do that as part of a condition of approval if necessary. The project meets all the zoning requirements as far as the minimum lot area of 3 acres. We are meeting the 25-foot setback from the property lines. We also have maintained the 10-foot buffer. Currently, the southern portion of the array is buffered by Mr. Parley's woods on the other side of the drainage ditch running through the property. The western side is buffered by the existing tree line on the adjacent property owner, but we are going to be planting screening plants along the northern and eastern side to screen the facility from the Misty Meadow subdivision. There are no changes to the existing drainage patterns out there. We will be doing a little bit of excavation in the center of the site to remove some of the trees, and there's a knoll that we will be taking down slightly to accommodate the installation of the solar panels. They can really only be installed at a maximum of 15% grade, so there are some spots in there that need to come down to be able to drive those posts. The posts and panels themselves are a ground mount system. It's post driven, so you've got basically an I-beam that's just driven into the ground with a pile driver, and then from there a racking system is installed. The arrays are supported on the racking system. Wiring for those are run basically to the end of each of the rows, and then we have underground conduit from the inverters that are there that run back to the switchgear pad at the beginning of the site. From there, you have a underground tie-in to what will be a National Grid transformer. That will be also in the back on site here. And then from there, we have a short underground run, and there'll be probably about, I'd say 4 to 6 poles leaving the site, heading south down the driveway, and then turning and heading east along the northerly property line on the other side of the drainage ditch and tying into the existing utility poles off of Misty Meadow there. And that will be National Grid's responsibility. Our demarcation point is the transformer itself, and after that, National Grid owns that, that equipment. The portion of the site is agricultural tilled land. That land will be slightly graded, leveled out again, and then we will be doing a final grass planting at the end, which is usually a low growth solar mix. Usually these sites only get mowed twice a year inside the fence array. And the maintenance as well as that is usually limited to about 2 times a year unless there's any issues. Lastly, there will be sedimentation and erosion control plans that were included as the site plan. There will be compost filter stock or straw wattles along the southern edge bordering the wetlands. And a NIPDES permit will be required and filed with the EPA for the project. And lastly, I'd say that the project received approval from the Conservation Commission last night. And with that, I will.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem.
Anybody have any questions? I got one or two, but they're mostly curiosity. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. What is it about the solar arrays that are flammable?
Nothing, really. Yeah, I mean, I'll let this actually question came up at the Conservation Commission. I'll let Natalie from Solar on Earth if you want to.
Yeah. So there's actually no parts that are flammable. They're all UL listed materials that are used throughout the entire array. The only time you'll ever going to see a fire inside of an array is if there's a brush fire. Everything's code compliant, everything's completely grounded. So there's never a chance that a fire can occur. It's just an extra safety precaution that we put there for the fire department.
So are the arrays entirely or predominantly metal and glass? Or are they flame protected hydrocarbon plastics?
So the posts themselves are steel and aluminum racking. The modules themselves are tempered glass with an aluminum sheet around it with a fire-resistant backing on them as well.
Okay.
And all of the wires that are used throughout the array are insulated as well.
They're all UL.
Yep, UL listed.
UL, low flammability.
Yes.
So what we're really talking about in terms of fire protection here is no different than any field.
Correct.
Christina, why do they need a fire truck turnaround?
The bylaw requires it. And if there's a fire, the fire department's obligated to go to the site and put the fire out.
Well, that's true of any brush fire in a field, though.
It's true of any commercial development, which this is. If they want to sign a letter to the town saying that they'll never call the fire department, then maybe the planning board is willing to waive the fire truck turnaround.
We might not have the neighbors' support.
I would make the statement, we had a turnaround anyways, we just have to extend it about 30 feet. So it really is a non-issue. It's not an issue for the project by any means. And then I'll make the statement too that the additional gravel we are adding will be a 40% void, like porous. It's not going to be a hard pan gravel driveway. It's going to be something that's a little more looser stone, so any of the stormwater is just going to infiltrate right into the ground as well.
Okay.
Can I just ask Natalie, can I get your last name for the record?
Sure, it's Potato. E.
I was gonna
like
say.
Victor. E. D like David. O.
Good. All right.
That's all I had.
No, it looks
Just
fairly
kinda-
simple. It's.
Again, this is strictly for my curiosity,
By all means,
because I
sir.
recognize that things like RFI are not within the purview of the town, or even the state for that matter.
Yeah.
But what's your inverter configuration on this? Is it one inverter per row, or is it one inverter per panel?
No, it's usually one inverter per, I think, Ali, I'll ask you back in there, 26? Are you doing 26 stringing on this?
6 times 16.
Okay. So it's usually, in this case, it'll be 16, but inverters. But usually you'll, just in general, on a solar site, you'll range in, stringing is a module term, so they take a bunch of modules, they put them all together. So it usually ranges anywhere between 14 to 26. It really just depends on the inverter size or one. It depends on the inverter sizes you're using, so.
Okay, I just asked because it's a lot easier to control RF noise if you have a problem when 16 inverters and with one per panel.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the noise,
And
the noise
commercial
output
stuff
for
doesn't.
is on this stuff is, it's non-existent.
Well, I'll point my beam at it. And but I don't imagine any problem. I don't have any trouble with my own. So,
Just a couple
Yeah.
clarifications. Can you just, looking at the bylaw, the design standards, can you just point out the perimeter security fence?
Oh, yeah, it is all the way, it is all the way around, so you got it,
Yeah.
and then, let me just head over here, so I'm not leaning too far. But it is it's kind of the circle,
Yeah.
Oh, I
line
see it,
here.
yeah.
Okay.
So it is kind of zigzagging all the way around. We tried to minimize the amount of fence or any impact, so we really
Yeah.
just kept it about 15 feet off the edge of panels.
And talk about lighting.
Zero lighting on site.
Okay. And I thought I heard you mention something about poles.
Yeah, so when we
Yep.
transition our service, our service that the development will own is underground, and we transfer over to a pad-mounted transformer,
Mhm.
which is then owned by National Grid. And so their service coming into the site there will then be overhead.
So on this map, can you?
Yeah, I can.
What's
Yep.
the run?
So the run right now, the proposed run is to come down this way, cross the drainage ditch, and then head out over here. There's a pole right set on this side. I'm in the Misty Meadow subdivision, and that's currently the interconnection point from National Grid.
Got it.
So it's connecting to existing poles?
Yes, correct. It's connecting the existing three-phase service out in
So-
serving the Misty Meadow subdivision as well.
So are there any new poles?
Yes, we will have new poles from that pad-mounted transformer. So there is going to be a pad-mounted transformer here. We'll have one pole probably right here. And I'm making a guess, usually National Grid is responsible for that piece of the design, but they tend to be about 150 feet, give or take, apart. So you'll have one here, probably another one just over here, and then maybe one or two more before we leave the site. And
Okay.
each of those poles will have a piece of equipment on it that National Grid requires as part of the interconnection. It's usually a recloser, switching, and a couple other items that they have. And usually it's about at least 4 poles that they need for their equipment before it leaves the site.
All right, so the board, you will need to grant a waiver from provision 195-68-3I, which says, all utility connections from the facility shall be underground unless specifically permitted otherwise by the planning board.
Okay. What would our mechanism be for that?
Well, there's a
That'd
waiver
simply be
provision. Letter K says, the above provisions may be waived by the planning board upon a finding that such deviation will not detract from the purposes.
Okay, good. And I gather, other than that, there's basically a single permit for the photovoltaic facility, and we haven't been asked for any specials.
Correct. And then the final item was, did you submit the letter from National Grid?
Yeah, we submitted the interconnection agreement. It was dated, I believe, September or something, 2018.
Okay. Yeah, Evan, what kind of a write-up would we need on this if we were to?
We've done,
make a
I think,
determination
2
on
of these at this point, so it's fairly straightforward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. Anybody else have, like to comment on this?
No, I'm all set.
Yeah, it looks pretty straightforward to me.
Yep.
Okay, well, I will accept
I'll give you a
It's a pub-
motion to close the public hearing.
It is a
I don't think
public
we are
hearing.
even public.
We're not
Huh?
even a
It's a
public
public hearing.
Oh.
Oh, it is. Did you
Does
ask?
not say so. Okay, new
Well,
public.
then you,
All right.
you need to ask for.
We are a public hearing, so would somebody like to say something? In the public, want to give you plenty of opportunity here. Anybody? Okay, I see no.
Give you a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved, seconded.
Yep.
Who
All in
seconded
favor?
it?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, do we need to put any specifics on that? Remember, we have to specify
waiver, too,
the
yeah.
waiver on the
Yep,
polls.
and the waiver, motion to approve as written, plus the waiver for the telephone poles.
Second.
Okay. Moved, seconded. Final comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thanks, guys.
Okay,
Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. Planning board,
Yeah.
thank you.
sure.
Photovoltaic.
1.08 megawatts, huh?
Photovoltaic. Photovoltaic.
That's the DC.
You forget the L. Photovoltaic.
Oh, so that's, I always wondered what the efficiency was on those. It's about 85%?
It's about, you can range, depending on the size wise,
Yeah.
anywhere from like inverters,
Yeah.
60 to 70%.
Okay, gotcha.
Conversion, so.
Okay, thank you. Very good. Okay, that's it for Pine Hill Road. we have a continuing public hearing, and I see Bill Harvey. So this is off Tobin Ave, SGC Development LLC for a definitive subdivision.
Correct. Good evening. For the record, Brian Goodrow with Hancock Associates, along with the applicant, Mr. Harvey. So we were here before this board back in December, applying for a definitive subdivision, and there was lengthy discussion about various items, and we kept circling around a critical piece that was access. So the end of Tobin Road has a parcel that's deeded for street purposes that's owned by the town of Chelmsford, and town council gave an opinion that a license or an easement would have to be secured in order for legal access for the subdivision to occur. So that meeting was continued, and we had subsequently worked with the Board of Selectmen to petition for a town meeting warrant article for February special town meeting. So that's February 4th. We are on the agenda to secure that, and we're continuing to work with the selectmen and the finance committee to hammer out the details of the license or easement for access. Additionally, we've had the opportunity to work with Ms. Papadopoulos regarding technical clarifications and things of that nature regarding stormwater and utilities. And I think based on the conversation that we had today, and feel free to jump in, that we're coming to kind of the end of the punch list, if you will. There's a couple of remaining items left, but nothing that we can't work through prior to endorsement of any final plan, should this board feel that the subdivision merits approval. With that said, I'm here to answer further questions.
Okay. So, before we get going, I want to be clear as to what action we would be or could be taking tonight. You're looking for action before the matter actually goes through town meeting?
We are.
Okay.
And we would certainly welcome a condition
It would have
with
to be a
specific
condition.
language regarding that easement
Okay.
and licensed access.
Evan, do you recall, were there any dangling items other than basically the access issue?
I think you have a couple new letters.
Okay.
I know that.
All right, let's get those letters read into the record.
From the Public Works, dear planning board members, this office has reviewed the subdivision plans by Hancock Associates consisting of 8 sheets dated September 19, 2018, revised through November 26, 2018, and a supplemental data report dated September 20, 2018, revised through November 26, 2018. As the application currently stands, the access to Tobin Ave is going before town meeting on February 4th, 2019. It is my understanding that the applicant wishes to pursue approval from the planning board if the access is ultimately granted. This office has the following comments. 1, this department shall be notified when work on site is to commence in order to arrange for inspections. 2, any revisions to the drainage system shall be submitted and approved by this office. 3, the stormwater operation and maintenance plan shall be followed as described in the report. Copies of any inspections or other reports done in accordance with the plan shall be forwarded to the engineering office. 4, the drainage system shall remain private. The owners will be responsible for routine maintenance of the entire drainage system. 5, a site as-built shall be provided upon completion of the work on site. As-built to include a letter from the engineer stating that all stormwater devices has been built to satisfy Mass Stormwater standards. Provide all supporting documents and calculations. The as-built shall be from a ground survey and submitted in AutoCAD and paper form. 6, all unsuitable material, if any, discovered in excavation for the detention basin shall be removed and disposed of in accordance with state and local regulations. 7, this project requires NPDES construction general permit. A final copy of the stormwater pollution prevention plan must be submitted to the town as well as filed with the EPA prior to beginning any site work. 8, the proposed sewer work will require permitting and applicable fees from the DPW Sewer Division for connection to the municipal sewer system. 9, the sewer work is proposed to go into Middlesex Street. This portion of the street was last paved in 2015 and has a no-cut moratorium until the end of 2020, which would prohibit any non-emergency cut into the pavement. 10, a road opening permit is required from the DPW Highway Division for work within the Tobin Ave and Middlesex Street right-of-ways. 11, trench permits shall be filed as necessary per 520 CMR 14, Chapter 82A. 12, a bond should be established with the town prior to the release of any lot. 13, a street sign and private way sign, as directed by the 911 committee, shall be provided at the intersection of the private road in Tobin Ave. 14, the design engineer has received design and draft reviews, comments from this office. If you have any questions, please contact this office, Christina Papadopoulos.
Thank you. Are there any others?
No, that was it.
Okay, very good. So that's read into the record. This is a continuing public,
There
oh, go
was
ahead.
supposed to be a letter from the North Chelmsford Water District.
Is there? Take a look, see if we can find it.
Can you bring it up in your email?
No, it's in there.
Oh, it is.
It's in there. Is it from today?
I don't see it in here.
Bill, is it
Yeah.
from today? It's, that's not
forwarded
the one
to
I
you.
have then.
You have it on email?
I'm not gonna-
So we may not have it in the file, but I can
Yeah,
tell you that
but it does exist.
it was confirmation from the North Chelmsford Water District that they have an agreement with the applicant. I believe it's
All
to
right, so
looping.
that detail's been
Yeah, the
taken care of.
project engineer can tell you more about it.
Okay, very good. Well, it's a continued public hearing, but before I open it up to the floor, just run quickly around us if anybody has any questions or particular concerns they'd like people to address. Anybody? I think we heard a fair bit about
I think
this.
we heard a bunch of them.
Maybe.
Last time around.
Was, we weren't all here before, right?
Who was missing?
Who did we have the first time around?
Yeah, we better check and make sure that we have enough people to do this.
Do you ask the applicant if they recall who was, who wasn't
That's a
here?
different
Who wasn't
number,
here?
Well, Ed has
would-
been replaced.
I was here. Were you here?
I was here.
I was too.
You were not
I
there.
was.
All right, so
So there's 4 of us. We got a quorum.
Walsh is not,
No, he's not eligible to vote on this.
So you got one,
Me and
Nan,
Don?
Tim.
Yeah, so we got
Three.
5.
Fair.
We have 4, yeah, we have enough.
We have 5.
We have
Trying to
enough.
make sure that we have it in the record that
All right.
Do we
Okay.
have,
I can check if you can continue.
Can you
I
check,
mean,
can you check quickly? I just want to make sure that we
I
get
can
the,
try.
the committee count right.
You were here too, Hank was there too.
Hank was there as well.
Yeah.
We have in front of
do we
you.
have a copy of the
What was-
easement across the church property?
What was the date of the opening?
Good question.
It was continued on the 12th. It was,
6. All right, we had
Town
December
meeting.
12th.
I don't have December.
oh,
11, 28, maybe November 28.
11/28.
Well, we certainly discussed it December 12th.
that was the only time we did.
Yeah, okay, and that time we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the current crew plus Henry. So, okay, yes, we have plenty to cover. Okay.
Mike, do we have a copy of the easement across the church parking lot? For utility easement?
So that easement's located on the plan set, on sheet 2, the existing conditions plans,
Yeah,
which
that's what I'm looking
references the book and deed, or the book and page of the recorded easement.
I haven't found that yet. I found the easement. I haven't found any reference of what authorizes it.
So if you look on, it's the second page, it says 20-foot wide utility easement, deed book 31517, page 222.
31517.
31517, page 222.
There's 2 of 8. All right, let's see what I've got. Aha! I did find it. All right. So, the letter you just read, it said something about they can't cut into
Pavement.
the pavement on Middlesex. Can they actually make this happen if they can't cut into the pavement?
We do. So we have 3 opportunities to connect to sewer. There is sewer within Tobin, which would require us to raise the proposed grade of the roadway to be able to connect into that by gravity. If it turns out that that's not financially feasible, or there's other technical challenges, we can always install a force main, and there would be individual grinder pumps for each unit. And then obviously the most preferred method is what we're currently showing.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, but it's doable in any event. Okay, anybody else have an initial question before I turn it over to the public?
Yeah, actually, when you were last here, and possibly I know the answer to this question, but maybe confirmation, and tell us, you did speak with John Street and the abutters to find an ingress back into the property. Whatever happened.
So we looked at John Street, and it was kind of running in parallel. We had looked at all of our different opportunities for access, whether it be Purley, whether it be John, or as proposed with Tobin. John is a viable alternative, but as things were progressing with the selectmen and town meeting, we're chasing down the most preferred route, which is what's before the board today.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, this is a public hearing, and I would welcome anybody from the public to come up and say a word. Please, identify yourself.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Kathleen Alves. I am at 29 Tobin Ave, not Lost Valley Drive, 29 Tobin Ave, and I represent the other 3 homeowners on my private way. I have sought council's advice on the various documentation that has been provided to both you and the Board of Selectmen in town, speaking of the covenant, speaking of the easement in Lot T. And I have been advised that the original covenant did not have, or may not have spoken of exclusivity for our use only. And that is for the simple thought that on the original plans provided for the sale of the church property, parcel A is a non-buildable lot. So at time of covenant, they did not need to turn around and say that it was exclusive. Second of all, council has also advised me that there will be a burden of easement of my property because of the fact that you will then grant an easement to SGC as well, which will overlap my easement. In square footage flat, there might be enough room to go 30-30. But we're not talking a flat parcel of land. Part of Lot T is actually at a grade. There is no flatness. So I would then say to the board, is the board then saying my easement, my way in and out of my home, is going to be up over this hill area? I don't think that's true. The third point that council had advised me on is my opportunity right, property right. And that states in the Constitution that because of my land abutting Lot T, I have rights to this property. Now, in this property, Lot T, there is my easement rights, and there's easement rights for utilities. So now you're going to grant a third easement on top of all these others? I just still do not see, and I have repeatedly asked for documentation undefined, I apologize, to show clear possession for the intent of doing this project. I am not opposed to SGC building in this property. They own that land, they can do what they want. It would be the same as me going to SGC and saying, but I want part of what you're getting. My frontage and my deeds to my property state that my frontage is because of Lot T, and only because of Lot T. My frontage is not Lost Valley Drive. Lost Valley Drive is not a full build-out. The town waived the full build-out to grant the fact that Lot T would become my frontage instead of a built lot. Applicant is now also asking for you to waive the full build-out of their property and to have direct access as mine. If you notice on their document sent in, site rendering 1, which was part of the documents on the town website today, it very clearly defines, and you can see how the land is right now and where they're proposing their entrance in is like right there and encroaching our private way. No, it is this plan here.
Can I see it?
It's the same thing.
Oh, it's the same
It
thing.
is it the
Mine's
same?
just in
Oh,
color.
Yeah, okay, all righty. So if you can see, this here is hill, this here is ground, is not taken care of. This is grassy area. This area here that was referred to in previous meetings of a T looking for a lot, I have found that that's actually our overflow parking, similar to what he is proposing in his plan. So this is our overflow parking, so you're gonna grant him right to access his parcel over my overflow parking area. I still don't see.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Where that overflow parking is, isn't that on the town of Chelmsford's property?
Yes, it is.
So how can your parking be on the town of Chelmsford?
Because it was covered in the covenant, it is stated that that is for our use.
I'd like to make a point here. We cannot grant an easement.
Okay.
That's not what we do, and we haven't the authority to do it.
Right, so
That's, I think, a legal question that you could work out with the proponent. And I suppose if the argument is good and strong, you could block his project based on that. But that's not something that we have the power to do.
I understand. So my confusion in tonight's meeting, as well as the possibility of the board granting him the right to move forward, he does not have clear access yet because of all the meetings yet to come.
Yeah.
So I, as a homeowner in the town, are requesting that the vote not be taken tonight, that the vote be postponed until such time the access is determined. Because once access is determined, then everything is going to change. applicant just mentioned that they're talking about raising the grade. Well, they raise the grade of their property. When it rains, my property floods. I don't know that that's that's a very good alternative. So I don't think that the board should make a decision until access is granted, and then they have a clear, definitive plan that is acceptable for access.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to comment? Anybody on the board or out in the audience? Hi, Glenn.
Glenn Diggs, 220 Wellman Ave, member of the Board of Selectmen, not speaking for the board. This issue came to us at our last meeting. We're going to be voting on it coming up very quickly. My only question is, when it was described as far as the septic plan, and it was mentioned there are three kind of scenarios, and I didn't know if it was within your jurisdiction to say that two are acceptable, but grinder pumps would not be acceptable. Reason is that it brings a long-term liability to the town because we're responsible if they should fail in the future. If it costs the developer a little bit more money, but it saves the town money later on, I think it should be done that way. So I don't know if that's within your jurisdiction or not.
I would agree with you that the grinder pump is the least favorable of all the alternatives. I think the proponent agrees.
But if they can make gravity, which they say they can by just raising the grade or kicking up to an 8-inch pipe instead of a 6-inch
That's within
pipe.
your scope.
Yeah, and I don't know of any
Thank you.
place in our bylaws, in any of the bylaws, including the zoning bylaw, that prohibits new construction that is dependent upon grinder pumps.
Right.
So I don't think it's in our purview
They're there for a reason.
prohibit it, although we certainly can discourage it.
Yeah.
Right, if that's their only alternative.
If that's their only alternative to
You can't-
develop.
Well, I mean, remember, we're looking at a subdivision plan here. We're not looking at a full build-out yet.
That's right.
So, okay.
But either way, it's not prohibited.
All right. Do we, as a board, have any other issues with this that need to be addressed before we can move forward?
Well, I think one of the speakers brought up something that just kind of triggered me. And I would like to ask a question of the engineer, please. In the area that has the entry access from Tobin Ave, if I look at your topographical as is and to be, it is being brought up. There's a hole there that's going to collect water and absorb it, reabsorb it, that will go away with this plan. Could you show us what will be the flow off, the ground flow impacts
Certainly.
of those changes?
Sure. So what we've done is we've looked at kind of the entire neighborhood globally to understand where stormwater is going right now, and we've specifically chosen analysis points that reflect that. So all of this land actually flows in this direction right now. And there are 3 slight depressions within the existing topography. 2 of those depressions are going to be filled in, rightly noticed. And what's going to happen is there's going to remain to be one kind of at the end of St. John's parking lot and at the end of what will be New Tobin Ave or the new street. And we've specifically analyzed this for 2 main reasons. The first being stormwater management. So we're required to treat and attenuate stormwater runoff to essentially recreate the existing condition. And the second aspect, because there's not really an outlet to this area, we've evaluated it for flooding. So because we have kind of a low-lying area that the entire subcatchment drains to now, we want to make sure that we're not putting more water or putting or raising the level of flooding that's currently in that situation to a detrimental impact of, say, the St. John's parking lot. So what we've done is we've mitigated all of our improvements and these grade changes to make sure that we're still mirroring the existing condition. And that's all been fully modeled with stormwater calculations and submitted to the town engineer for review.
With your fill at the entry area on the lower left, will the target property be lower or higher than the adjacent development?
Lost Valley?
Yeah.
Lower. Even in the case if we had to raise grades from where what we're presenting today, it'll still be lower than that property.
So the concern about backflow into Lost Valley is not.
It's not something that I would be concerned about, and it's something that we have to take into account in our design regardless.
All right. Okay.
Good.
I do question process. Why would we entertain this now when the applicant is moving this to town meeting to unlock the property with an easement? So therefore, if he's not granted the easement, there's nothing to talk about. So what's a harm in continuing this public hearing until after?
I think from our perspective, there's no harm in continuing, and there's no harm in approving with a condition.
I think it's a
Comes to the same
double-edged
thing.
sword. If you go to town meeting, they're gonna say, why are we gonna
It goes to
approve
town
this if
meeting.
we don't know that the planning board is gonna allow it? Why are we wasting our time? You know what I mean? It could go either way.
If we go to town meeting and it's an open meeting, we cannot speak on it at all. Our tongue is tied at that point. Just like we were in front of the selectmen the other night when they were asking us questions. We can't answer any questions if it's an open meeting. We're still taking input.
I think that's incorrect. I think they can speak as
Therefore, in order to be able to answer any questions at town meeting, we have to approve it with conditions
That's
and
not true.
close it out.
Right.
You can speak as an individual town meeting rep, or as a.
We were all moving in the
No,
direction
you
of
cannot speak
Right.
as a
approving
board.
or.
At the last meeting,
yeah.
we had all agreed to do
We
that.
talked about all the construction, I mean, so I don't think it's gonna hurt to let them know at least that we're in
Right.
favor of it. There were benefits to the town that was discussed that I think too.
I also think that would be nice to get into the record here, is that they can show the benefits again that the applicant's proposing for us, for the town, just so that everybody's perfectly clear that.
If we vote on it tonight and it fails at town meeting,
It's done.
It doesn't matter.
he's gonna have to come back and
He has to come
reapply.
back.
Right.
Yeah.
So it
He
doesn't-
can't build
It's a whole
out.
new project.
It's a whole new project, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so he can't, if town meeting doesn't pass it, no matter what we do here tonight, he can't build it as it is.
We'd just be helping his case if we approved it, though, strengthening it.
Well,
Which isn't bad
doesn't
either
hurt.
way. Right.
Okay.
He was gonna get to answer my question, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you'd like me to reiterate kind of some of the key points that the applicant has put forth in this proposal. With respect to the water, we are proposing to loop the water main from Tobin Ave through John Street, and that was at the request of the North Chelmsford Water District. Right now, Tobin Ave is a dead end, and John Street is a dead end. And it's been conveyed to us that John Street has a little, they get complaints regarding their water. I don't necessarily know if that's true on Tobin, but the loop is going to eliminate that, and the cost is to be borne by the applicant. We've worked with DPW and engineering at the end of Tobin Road to kind of reconfigure pavement lines so that we're providing appropriate access, signage to make sure that we're not doing anything detrimental to the Lost Valley Drive, the existing residents, and to make sure that we have safe access for the proposed subdivision that's before you. Additionally, we are proposing the sewer in a gravity configuration, and we are certainly trying to continue to maintain that.
All right. Thank you. Any additional comments? Would you like to speak a little more?
Hi, Kathleen Alves again, and if I could step up to here. Applicant and the speaker said that his properties would be lower than ours. One of the reasons, Mr. Chairman, we are not connected to sewer is the engineers of town, back when the sewer came down Tobin Ave, which in fact I was a resident up here myself, in my Uncle Billy's properties that my mother owned. The property that comes down Tobin Ave, the pump that sits in front of 24 Tobin Ave was set not at a depth low enough for us on Lost Valley Drive to be able to tie in gravity fed. So if that was the condition back then, that we couldn't tie in because of elevation and the fact that we weren't high enough to gravity feed, how then is applicant going to propose that his property is going to be lower than ours if he's going to be gravity fed? That does not make sense to me. The speaker also had said that the property veers, that our watershed goes to his property. That's only true for Lot P, which is, or Lot J, which is adjacent to my lot. My lot, this lot here may come down here because of the elevation and grade. However, the property that's now off of Highland, in that 4-unit development ahead, the property, the 2 condo unit right behind me, and the other condo unit on Princeton as well, on either side of my property, both could not face Princeton Ave because of the water table right behind my property. They put a restriction on the way they could build their properties because of the way the water table was. It would affect my property in a way that it would be adverse to me, and it would then flood out my property, which the back of my house pretty much touches the back of the property. So all the flow off the soccer field, as well as everything else, my property sits much lower as far as the ability to do a gravity-fed sewer line. So again, I don't understand how my property could be higher than his property. There's just no way. If we could have been, we would have hooked up through gravity feed, but we can't.
You know, that's an interesting piece of engineering logic.
Back when that project was done, the sewer department was giving the grinder pumps. They weren't not allowing grinder pumps. There's many grinder pumps in town. I sat on a grinder pump committee.
Yeah,
and
I remember you did.
There's projects just like that they were told they have to have a grinder pump. That's why the whole thing came into the town maintaining them, because they were thrown into people's laps saying you have to have a grinder pump.
All right.
And I think that the other thing is that I think their proposal is to go out to St. John's and not up Tobin is their preferred.
Yeah.
Where the sewer's gonna go.
Okay.
If that's a preferred method, but as I said, we don't even have a definite on it, but that would be a reason why they could get out and not go out town Tobin.
What was the time frame on that, not being able to cut Middlesex Road?
2020, yeah.
It's only really a year away, so in all reality, that might fall right into you. You know what I mean? You might hit it. If you had to go that way, but.
Why would you take sewer at St. John's when it's so much higher?
You'd have to pump it.
Well, I guess you'd have to pump it.
You don't go over the ground, you want to go under the ground. You might have to dig deeper.
Oh, yeah, but there's a big cliff there.
It's like in front of my house is 21 feet down. I don't know what it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's that far down?
Yeah, they'll drop that down with with manholes, and
Yeah, right.
it's not a,
I mean, this is showing
And then again-
elevation increase from 112 to 146.
Yeah, but then again, that's
Under
not our,
48.
it's not our really
Yeah, it's not
purview.
our
It's not our territory.
Yeah. Accepted.
over how many feet?
I don't know.
50 feet over 1,000 feet is not much at all. 50 feet over 100 feet is a lot.
Oh, a couple hundred.
Something like that.
Couple hundred, it's
Okay.
pretty steep.
All right. Anybody else like to make additional comments? Anybody out there want to speak to this? Okay.
Give you a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
And second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Is that
Opposed,
unanimous?
anybody? Huh?
Unanimous.
Let's see, I didn't see.
I can't, I'm not voting.
Can't vote on
Yeah, you
this.
can't,
Oh,
Mike can't vote.
okay.
Thank you.
I can't
No, you
vote.
can't.
It's not a
All of us,
special
I think,
permit.
right?
Oh,
Six voting members, assuming that you were all
Yes.
here at all hearings.
Okay.
I'll give you a motion to approve pending, approval of the easement across Tobin Ave.
I think the way to put that might be conditional on the granting of an appropriate easement by the town.
Okay. That'd be a better way to put it. We'll go with that.
Okay. Glenn, out of your mouth.
Okay. Is there,
Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second. Final comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And one abstention. That's Mike again. He can't vote.
Well, he just doesn't count.
Okay.
Does count.
You got it.
Thank you.
But when this all settles out with the town, you might want to spend a little time seeing what you can rearrange there at the end to get everybody in reasonable shape. Okay. Takes another hearing off our list. I guess, let me take things slightly out of order. Let me talk a bit about the master plan committee appointments, and Glenn Diggs wanted to say something to us, and being an esteemed member of the Board of Selectmen, I grant him the privilege. Go ahead.
I just wanted to suggest, you have some members of the Board of Selectmen who's going to theoretically go on this. You have members of the
Yeah,
planning board.
we'd specified one member of Selectmen.
Right.
We're trying to keep it a little
Some from
small.
your board, some
Yep.
maybe previous members that were
Yep,
on it, and
that's
some new
correct.
members. And considering that there's probably going to be a new Board of Selectmen, there's probably going to be a new Board of Planning Board as far as its makeup, that perhaps you should wait until an election so that those the people that are selected are reflective of those new boards. We're only talking a couple of months. It's going to take considerable amount of time to go through this. The document's about 150 pages. It took a long time to do the town bylaws, and that was only about 50 pages. And, I just would think that it would be better to start out fresh with the new group who will be living and voting at the time, when it comes time. That's all.
Right, that's actually an interesting point. I think the members that I happen to have picked from the planning board are not up for election this time.
That's correct.
So they're huh?
How astute of you.
Yes. Well, occasionally I get.
It wouldn't have been worth
However, I know that's not
volunteering
true
if
with the
we
Board
were.
of Selectmen. I don't think we have a particular rush here. I do want to report that George has said that he will take he'd be willing to take one of the positions for a prior member.
Georgia and Linda Prescott. expressed
Linda
interest.
Prescott has put in a.
Yeah, those are the two who have
Yeah.
expressed interest via email back to me.
Yeah. What do we need to do for approvals on that, or can we just declare them?
Those would be planning board appointments.
Okay.
So you can handle it however you want. If you want the form, you can have the form, but you don't really need the form.
Okay, but, well, I'm glad that we have them. I think at this point, that's two good picks. Linda will bring some historical to it, which is one of the aspects that we need to look at. So I'm fine with approving those, but I don't think we're going to get to be meeting on this for quite some time, Glenn, because we've got a special meeting next week. We've got a special town meeting coming up after that. And then, that already gets us into the middle of February, and that's only 6 weeks away from the election. So I don't think it would be, and I still have to find two citizens representatives. We haven't got them yet. So I think we can probably go forward, but if the selectman selection for that committee doesn't happen for 6 or 8 weeks, I don't think it's going to cause us any trouble at all. So, all right. Let's see. That said, so I guess consider this a formal appointment of you, George. Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. He raised his hand. And of Linda as well. I know both of them, and I know they'll both be really good. Should we put out some kind of a notice for the citizens?
It is.
You're on it?
Yep, it's, the committee is on the website. It's
good.
best made, and you can apply right online. They're accepting applications.
Okay,
It's
so
also gonna be-
anybody watching us from out there, if you are not a member of the Board of Selectmen, not a past Master Plan Committee member, and not a member of the Planning Board, consider whether you might want to be on the Master Plan Committee and get on the town website and fill in the forms and let us know.
Keeping in mind that it requires a lot of your time.
Yeah. Yeah, it will. That's one of the...
No, right.
Yeah,
George is gonna
yeah,
have
we
to.
believe you, George. Yes.
If it's truly an update, it won't take.
Well, that's and that's exactly what we're thinking of. An update. I'm thinking there may be one or two pieces that call for major rewrite, but we're not going to. I don't think we need to redo the whole thing. And I think we'll do just fine with that.
No, but we do need to
That's what
update
the-
all the data.
Well, that's what the committee is for, and the
That's
committee
right.
will do that. We really don't need to be.
Okay. Let's see. Let me go back here. New business, zoning items, Route 40. I'll report that progress is being made. It's slower than we want, but we are intending to have a basic proposal. What was the time frame we put on it? You guys remember?
By the 20th.
Yeah. 20th of February, yeah.
By the 20th of February.
20th of February.
Let me point out again that I have kind of pulled myself off of that committee because with Mike attaining a place on the planning board, that would put 4 planning board members on it, and it's not acceptable. That becomes a planning board meeting, and we don't want to have to post it that way. So I have stepped off of that committee. I'm sitting in the audience and watching, but I am not part of that committee at this point.
So a vote was taken last evening.
Yes.
Should we be sharing that, or?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So you have the south side and you have the north side of Route 40.
Yeah.
Vote was taken last evening for the south side.
Yeah.
And right now it's currently zoned RC. There's discussion whether it should be a down zone to a RB or possibly
Up zone to
something more
RM.
like RM. But it was decided that it would be 6-1 vote. It would be kept at RC on the south side. And then Nan was tasked with drafting up some possibly recommendation that would be later presented to the planning board.
Okay.
Is that accurate, Nan?
Yeah.
I think that's good. I will say that we also went through a lot of discussions and did not get to a vote on the north side. We are looking at alternatives in terms of, I think we have reasonably good consensus on the Route 40 committee about what would and would not, what we would and would not like to see there, but we don't yet have consensus on how that would be enacted within the zoning regulations and the use tables. So I'm also tasked with drafting up some, at least 2 alternatives that we will then take forward and discuss at the next meeting.
And the next meeting is next Tuesday.
It's next Tuesday, yeah, we're revving this up a bit. Unfortunately, February's only got 28 days this year. So, it might be, what, finished on February 33rd or something like that.
A few more.
And where's it gonna be held? Because I have somebody keeps calling me and asking me a million
Right here.
questions.
Yeah,
Right
that
here.
was gonna be right here. 204.
This room.
Yeah, we considered doing something up in North Chelmsford, but this is really, it's really a townwide issue. It was a feeling of a number of people. Having watched it, I can speak for what they said.
But the next meeting will be
Yeah.
in 204, right?
Yes.
Yeah, 204. The next meeting will be in 204. We'll keep it here in Town Hall. Okay, any other zoning items to consider? We do have a special meeting in a week, I believe.
We got the
And-
129 on the
On the-
agenda, and we get some people.
On
to
January
speak.
30th, you have a zoning public hearing for the citizens petition related to chickens. And then the legal ads for zoning public hearings scheduled for February 13th have gone in. We
Okay.
advertised 3 zoning articles. We advertised Route 40 as a placeholder.
Yep.
We advertised historic preservation.
Yep.
And 129 related to drive-throughs.
So we need to, quick as a bunny, develop the wording that will go to those public hearings for those articles. Which means I guess I'm drafting some other pieces too.
Okay. Good.
We did meet last night with Historic Preservation and had some more continuing discussions over modifications of the previous zoning article on historic preservation. We are expecting to meet with them again before the February 13th date.
Okay.
So procedurally?
Yep.
My suggestion is that the planning board shouldn't see these zoning articles for the first time on the 13th.
Right.
Hope not.
Get 'em out
So
a
you've
week
already
early.
received the Route 129. I think we talked about discussing it this evening. You may be able to have time to discuss any and all items additionally on the 30th. And then if the board feels as though you need a special meeting prior to the 13th, you may be able to schedule that for February 6th.
Oh, boy.
That's really dependent on.
Going to be a busy winter.
That may be dependent on Route 40, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, very well.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think it's, the other stuff is in development. I guess we're having our public hearing for the 129 changes on the 13th, but it probably wouldn't hurt us to have some conversation about that right now. So,
It's you guys.
So I gave you all the materials at the last
Yeah.
meeting. I gave you a kind of a high-level overview. I asked each of you to review it, give it some additional thought for this evening. My goal this evening is to identify any red flags, any deficiencies, see if we're on the right track. This evening, I did invite several stakeholders in the audience, representatives from 197 Billerica Road, and I believe there's a representative from 330 Billerica Road.
Okay.
You've heard me express that both of those property owners have expressed an interest in this issue, and I invited them here this evening. Primarily with the thought that you may like to hear their interest and their perspective on this issue. But I think tonight's focus really needs to be on the zoning strategy, because if the board feels as though amendments are necessary, then, as I mentioned, those should be drafted in place.
Yeah, well ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, with that in mind, we don't have copies of that with us tonight.
You wanna bring it up? I can bring it up for you. Like I said,
Yeah, why don't you bring the
I did
language up
hand it
and
out
let's have a look
at
at
the last meeting. Drive-through zoning. Scroll down.
Right, that's unread.
Again. All right. So the proposed revisions are segregated to a new section number 4, all contained within one page. Letters A through I with a waiver provision. And at the last meeting, I somewhat itemized the rationale for the each individual standard. So to refresh people's memory, all food-related amenities are currently allowed under zoning.
Yeah.
What is specifically being targeted here is to allow a drive-through component as part of a fast food restaurant. We currently define what a fast food restaurant is. As I tried to explain to you, the challenge here is that this is not about traditional fast food as we know it. That's why the standards A through I are as specific as they are. The goal and intent and the vision here with 129 is to treat 129 differently than other commercial districts in town, specifically for purposes of aiming higher, related to higher quality food establishments. The vision is to have restaurants down there with sit-down capacity, where there's food preparation and eating within the restaurant, and then have an accessory kind of related use that would be the drive-through. It's not intended to have, for lack of a better word, kind of a photo mat kind of situation, where there is no interior seating. The real goal here is to create sit-down restaurants that are upscale, fast casual. Examples around Eastern Mass or Panera or Starbucks are good examples that are beginning to install drive-throughs as part of their operations. And as I mentioned, somewhat of the conceptual challenge here is that this new concept is moving from West Coast to East Coast. So I encourage you to Google, you'll see many national examples of not necessarily national chains, but regional chains or independents that are pursuing unique concepts related to upscale fast casual.
Can I ask you a couple of questions, Evan?
Sure.
I've worked in a Starbucks before. Everything is prepared somewhere else, and they put it in a microwave, and they reheat it, and they send it out. Would that come underneath the preparation on premises? I
Sure.
mean, I'm just trying to, how do we define that?
You mentioned that at the last meeting, and my response was that language is currently in the zoning. It's been in the zoning bylaw for over a decade.
Yeah,
There's never been a challenge or difficulty in defining what is a fast food restaurant and what isn't a fast food restaurant. So Starbucks is considered fast food.
It says prepared on premises is what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, so we don't define what prepared is.
That's what I'm asking.
Right.
I mean, I understand like a Dunkin' Donuts, they're bringing a truckload of donuts in, they put them in a case. That's not prepared on site is what way I would be reading it.
But there are other things that are prepared on site.
That's correct.
Right.
Do we have?
So it's not. It's one of many areas within the zoning bylaw where, fortunately, we have not needed to debate what certain terms mean.
Yeah.
I think every restaurant, even Dunkin' Donuts, prepares something on site.
That's I understand.
Right. And preparing doesn't necessarily mean cooking.
Yeah.
It could mean putting together, right?
Yeah.
Another example is more recent is KJ's Cafe.
Yeah.
They do little or no cooking on site, other than I think an egg
Panini press.
Yeah.
and a panini press.
Yeah. They make muffins
They
and
bring
stuff.
them in.
get-
They bring them in off-site.
No.
Well, that's the way
I
it was
just- I don't know.
described to us.
Well,
Okay, but every food establishment that's in town,
yeah.
Twain Route 3.
you know, complies. They do some sort of food preparation.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not opposed to this. I was the one that said, what about Starbucks? And you
Sure,
said,
sure.
no. Remember that? Yeah, on 129.
So I did speak to.
I'm not saying I'm opposed, I'm just the regulations.
Yeah.
The other comment I would have is when we say Mill Road, we gotta put something where it stops on Mill Road. I just don't think you can leave Mill
So
Road
it's-
wide open.
Again, this is based upon the overlay map. The overlay map talks about the commercial exclusion zone, so it now ends at 278, 282 Mill Road. So the map is the defining. The reason that I put on main arteries, I don't have to put Billerica on Main, but I think it's important because that specifically indicates that strategically we're not interested in having these fast food establishments on side streets within the district.
Yeah, there's just, I know we've approved
I mean, I can
a small thing
right.
there.
So if you want to put, Mill Road, Billerica Mill Road within, in accordance with the overlay map, we can
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, I'm just afraid people are gonna take and look at this, and it's gonna be something else, it's gonna be a lightning rod at town meeting.
Right.
Because
I mean,
we
the
do-
map,
we
the-
do
the
get-
map, right, this is, we're inserting this provision into
Yeah.
an existing bylaw and an existing overlay map.
Which town meeting
And that,
Which town meeting approved.
that will be
Yeah, but-
presented.
Yeah, you've been to town meeting before, haven't you?
Pardon me?
You've been to town meeting before, haven't you?
If you're suggesting that, there'd be less of a lightning rod if it did not extend down Mill Road, that I can understand that.
That's kind of what I was thinking, but
But
we have already approved a small development
Right.
down in that area anyways, which they had to come in and get special permission for.
Right.
They were
So
added to the overlay account.
I notified them as well about this meeting. They said they were interested in the concept. I don't believe they're here this evening.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that may not be a desired outcome for that particular property. The way I looked at it is, how could we exclude them, and why should we exclude them? Conceptually, at a zoning level, right? When it gets into specific site design, traffic circulation, that's where the special permit comes in with the planning board.
Yeah, I would just.
Wouldn't fit.
Evan, is drive-through, would it be like the 99 now, you drive up? and-
Not a window, no. No one needs permission to put in a window. You can do that now. This is traditional order menu, right? You drive in, you get in the queue, there's an order menu board, and then you circle around the building. This has nothing to do with.
It's not takeout, it's you drive up,
Nothing to
order
do
right
with
there.
that,
and then
right.
go,
If an existing business wants to have a online, telephone, call in advance window where you drive up and you pick up that food that's already been ordered, I don't think zoning prohibits that right now.
That's what they're leaning to now in California. They have digital ordering with the millennials.
Yeah.
And they have if you research, there's some nice restaurants that are doing this, and
I don't have a problem with the change. You have the best of the best of developers. You've got now hiring Lisa. I mean, you've got the EDC. Everybody's, on board for what you're doing isn't working, so trying something else. So I think we're going in a step in the right direction.
I tried to find some visuals to give you a kind of a better sense. Here's Moe's. We have a Moe's in Drum Hill, so that's an example.
It's actually on the end like that, too.
It's an end cap. This is Beloco. That's a known chain in the Eastern Mass area. They're converting to drive-throughs. Next example is what this bylaw would specifically prohibit, these kind of photomat, standalone, where they're really emphasizing the drive-through component as the primary revenue generator. That's not what we're targeting. And then there's one final one, a similar kind of photomat establishment. We're not looking for hot dog stands. We're looking for a restaurant that also has a drive-through component.
Yeah, I did go to the presentation at the, what was it, Economic Development Committee, I think, had the presentation from some of the folks that are interested in this kind of development. It was a good presentation. It was well presented. It demonstrated the needs and advantages for having drive-throughs for this type of food establishment in, I would say, not just in our industrial areas, but also in our commercial areas. So I'm not concerned about adding this type of use in the Route 129 corridor. But I am concerned about the way this bylaw change has been drafted. And the concern I have is basically putting the definition of this unique type of food establishment within the BAYOD. Because I really believe that we're going to need to reference this and permit this, not just on the 129 corridor, but in other places as well. And as such, we should be creating a definition of it in the terms clauses, and then referencing that term, that type of restaurant, in the Route 129 BAYOD. Because honestly, I'm seeing other areas that would very much benefit from including this, and embedding it in the use tables wouldn't be a bad thing to do. In terms of use of this type of food establishment in the Route 129 BAYOD, the one thing I don't particularly agree with here is excluding it to the primary corridor, to the primary roads. And my concern is that Route 129 itself has traffic issues. It has traffic congestion issues. And having access roads, having access to a drive-through establishment just kind of complicates those access issues. So from my standpoint, I would much rather see the access to these establishments restricted to internal to the properties, or access from side streets. So no new cuts. Basically, no new street cuts to access a upscale fast food, which is kind of pretty different from where Evan's draft is going. But that's my 2 cents on it. I'm in favor of it, but I think we need to draft it differently.
Mike? I got a question for Evan. Evan, I'm in favor of this. I get a quick question for you, just being new to the board. Can you put a restriction on it that it's at the intersection of Mill Road down to, say, Progress Ave on Billerica, and that's where you keep this drive-through service? Can you do that within the BAYOD?
Sure.
I mean, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I mean, it would add attention. I just don't want it to head down 129 towards residential neighborhoods or up Mill Road.
Well, there are no residential neighborhoods on 129.
Well, you got a few homes that head up past.
Couple homes does not constitute a neighborhood.
Okay.
And more
Residential homes.
More importantly, per zoning, they should not be there.
I agree. This is zoning conflict.
No.
No.
They're a non-conforming use,
Right.
pre-existing non-conforming. So the zoning map, what town meeting approved was, town meeting doesn't want those houses there.
Okay.
And over time, they will be removed.
So in your vision, would you see this go all the way down 129?
Within the overlay.
Within the overlay?
Within the overlay.
You would want that?
I don't think it's gonna go that far down. So the way I explained it to you at the last meeting is, the strategy here is to create nodes or pockets within the park. Those nodes are naturally evolving where there's vacant land. 197 is the first example. That's the southern node. So that captures everything from Apollo down to River Neck Road, Industrial Ave.
Yep.
Another node will evolve near the interchange. And then a third node will be along Mill Road. And maybe there's something in the middle there. I think strategically you need multiple nodes along that almost mile stretch of 129. The node concept serves to allow people to either walk within a quarter mile anywhere within the park and get to a node, or during the 6 months of inclement weather, they drive down the street and they're at a node.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the way the overlays was always going to evolve, is around vacant land or underutilized office buildings. More importantly, I'm not sure how we would say that 197 Billerica Road, you're not eligible for this opportunity. Legally, we can do that, but to me, that doesn't seem right, particularly where they were the first to embrace this opportunity and work with the board and community. It's already been approved for commercial development. And then the question would be, well, can the planning board special permit process accommodate a drive-through component that isn't detrimental to the neighborhood or to the property?
But you mentioned at I thought you mentioned the last meeting that you would you would have a limit of number of these.
I have that in there as letter I. I put that in there not because that's something that I'm concerned about, but I put that in there essentially as a placeholder. If there's a theme where we're going to be overridden by these requests. Right. I don't see that happening. So that's kind of like a belts and suspenders approach.
Yeah. Thanks.
Tim? I'm good. You guys? I'm good. I'm in favor of it. I kind of like the idea.
I guess, I'm not deeply concerned about whether this gets drafted into the Bayard at the moment or gets put in somewhere else. It can always be a multi-step process, and I think I see the rationale for possibly including this kind of thing in other parts of town and in other zones, not necessarily covered by the Bayard. But on the other hand, if we put it in to the Bayard now, and it's accepted, and it gets built out on, and that's really where most of this kind of stuff is likely to happen anyway. If later on in a couple of years we decide we want to spread the use of this concept, we can simply pull the language right out, plug it in somewhere else. It will be fairly straightforward to do. And at this point, I'm not sure it makes sense for us to engineer the big solution, because we're really only being asked or having any kind of economic pressure to do the small solution, which is 129.
So
that would be my recommendation.
This is all about 129.
Yeah, it is all about
this
129
This is nothing to do with Groton Road or Drum Hill.
Right.
This is all about 129.
But some of the concepts could very well become useful later.
That's
and then
fine.
we can use them when
fine,
the time
but the 129
occurs.
bylaw has never been written, and it continues not to be written to be able to be plucked unilaterally and copied and pasted for another overlay.
Right.
This overlay
quite
is designed
specific to
and intended
129.
specific to 129.
Yep.
If the town meeting feels as though it's appropriate to copy and paste it in, then so be it.
Yeah, but we can do that in another time.
129 is going to continue to be customized for 129.
Yep. And that's why we did. Well, that's why we did it.
Right.
That's why we did it.
Right.
I honestly think the majority of the board here is for this.
Yeah.
So what do we need
So
to
the
do?
question is getting
How do you
something
implement
drafted
it,
up that's
not-
close enough that we can get it in the warrant and we can discuss it reasonably at a public hearing in a couple of weeks. I think the public hearing for this is the 13th.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, Dan has historic preservation, she
Right.
has Route 40, she has a lot on her plate. maybe Evan's the closest to this, let him
Yeah,
take
I-
a shot
that's my
at
thought, too.
drafting it.
Well, it is drafted.
It is drafted.
That's it right there.
Evan's draft.
That's my proposal. I still haven't heard any specific.
That's your
my
story and you're
point.
sticking to
That
it.
is Evan's draft, and I think it belongs
Okay.
in definition.
Yeah, so it's been vetted, it's been vetted by EDC.
EDC, yeah, you guys will look at it.
EDC supports it. It's been circulated to some stakeholders. I've not received any negative
Yeah.
feedback. Again, some of them are here tonight. I would encourage you to engage with them. A brief period of time, I think it'll be worthwhile since they're here tonight. I think this is ready to go for the 13th. I'm not hearing the whole purpose
I do want to
tonight
get a
was
sense of the board on one thing. Is anybody deeply committed to the no more than so many per the entire district? I'm thinking that one.
You know, we've worked really hard not to allow Route 129 and specifically the Route 129 itself to become a drum hill.
Right.
To become a commercial
Exactly.
area.
That was a
And
very-
that's really the driver for that not more than. To me, if you don't allow new curb cuts or dedicated curb cuts for these things, I would just take that away. But, I mean, for me, I would make a trade-off that says no dedicated curb cuts for these restaurants and get rid of the limit on the number.
The problem with the getting into the detail of curb cuts is what you see out there today. Via the Bayard and the CEIOD could easily be completely scraped and redesigned in its entirety. So existing conditions are irrelevant when it comes to redevelopment of 129, particularly where you begin to introduce the possibility of drive-throughs on an end cap.
Yeah.
A property owner working with a traffic engineer in the town and ultimately the planning board may all agree that existing curb cuts should be closed and new ones should be open to improve or enhance traffic and circulation and safety on 129.
Yeah.
That is the planning board's job.
Evan, I take back the concept of no new curb cuts, but I still stick with the no dedicated curb cuts for these restaurants.
That is
In other
different.
words, that they share a curb cut with an additional use.
Right, and I thought that was captured in, you couldn't be freestanding. It had to be part of an existing
Yeah.
building, a multi-tenanted building.
I think that
Maybe it is.
effectively does that.
So that's part of the strategy.
Yeah,
We
that
don't
was my
want,
feeling.
the whole point here is we don't want freestanding, we don't want to treat 129 like Drum Hill.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
different visions and strategies.
We don't have a public hearing
Yep.
here, and we probably shouldn't tear it down too far. What I think we want to accomplish tonight is a draft that is close enough to what we're going to want to send to town meeting, that we can send it to them now, they can get it published, and any changes that we do want to make can be made by amendment at the time.
I think what you got there is
I don't
probably
think
good
you
enough
wanna
to
make
send to town
amendments at
meeting.
town
I
meeting.
don't want to, but it may happen.
So
With
that
leave
said,
that up,
we have
yeah.
some of the stakeholders here are the closest to the market. Maybe
Yeah.
they can share with us some of their experience as it came out tonight.
Well,
And we
I don't know,
appreciate that
I'm
they
a little
came
bit
out
concerned
tonight.
that's public hearing, and we're not doing a public hearing now. That's my
Yeah, I'm not sure
concern.
they were going to speak to the specifics of the overlay.
Okay,
I think it was more about the concept.
all right, well, if, I think conceptual commentary may be quite relevant, if anybody wants to say a quick word about the concept, see if they think we're on the right path. Hi.
Hi,
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you all. David Guthrie
Yeah.
here with Chris Finneral. I guess if I could ask clarification on the overlay, because in preliminary discussions relative to this amendment, there was a limiting component towards the 129 Route 3 exchange versus coming up to our property at 197. Are we currently included in this potential for modification?
Yep.
Okay, all right, that's
Think you
great.
would be.
Yeah, that's good news. Okay, good, thank you.
I think we're all on favor with what
Yeah, they were all.
Evan's doing. so-
And you're at 300, right?
Yeah, I've
I've learned never
In the
to
number.
screw up a favorable disposition of the board. But
Yes.
No, I'm here, I figured I might as well say, I'm Mark Vaughn, I'm a attorney with Reamer and Bronstein. We're based in Burlington, but
Yep.
do a lot of land use law, and have the privilege of representing the property owners that own the property at 330 and 300 Bill Ricker Road. So they're obviously very supportive of this. They have an asset that has been vacant for quite some time now. 330's been vacant for about 3 years. So they do have interest from someone that would be able to utilize this new provision. I think it's someone that very much fits the bill of what Mr. Belansky is describing as kind of a, you know, an upscale, evolved type of fast casual use, not a chain concept, but something that just has, you know, 2 locations currently that, you know, I think would certainly be a great catalyst for amenitizing the 330 building and be able to allow them to be in a better position to attract office tenants and fill that up.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay, so if I understand it, your argument is that there's a good economic argument for taking this path, that it enhances your ability to use the property.
Yeah, we think very much so, and I certainly recognize that there may, you know, not be a desire to see these, you know, everywhere and, you know, traditional fast food. But I think the way it's been crafted to be an end cap, limits on seats, no plastic utensils and things of that nature, I think it does fit a particular type of model out there that would be in keeping with at least what I understand the town would want to see.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, well, I'm aware of that model, so I've seen it once or twice. Okay, can I suggest, if the board is willing, that first of all, we shouldn't start out with something with question marks in it. So I keep looking at that item I. If we're going to work from a draft and present that at the public hearing and give it a full discussion.
Instead of throwing a number at it, you want to throw a percentage?
No, you gotta have a number.
I don't know, what do you think?
I would think 10.
All right.
You're likely gonna have 3 to 5 nodes, and, you know,
And might have 2
conceptually
in
2
each.
per node.
All right, 10 would be plenty. Yeah.
I would recommend we just get rid of that,
Yeah, the other possibility.
because I don't think the market's gonna drive more than 10.
Unlikely, right.
I can't imagine it.
What's the sense
You
of the
know.
board? Just drop I entirely?
It's fine.
Drop it.
Yeah.
Drop it?
Drop it.
Drop it. Okay, get that out of there and
Get
then,
it out of there. Evan,
it simplifies it a bit.
D through H. Could you move that to a definition and do a one-liner here that allows that definition?
I could, but not,
Would you?
not for February 13th. It's already been advertised.
Leave it.
So again, I mean, this was only intended for 129.
Yeah.
The rest of the
I
town,
understand
the rest
that.
of the town, I'm not sure you need this detailed provision. In fact, some of the photo mat
Yeah.
concepts may be,
May be
they're already
appropriate,
permitted, and Drum Hill, other parts in town may be more than appropriate
Yeah.
and reasonable for those locations.
Motion, do you need a motion to?
No, I think we just say, Evan, go ahead. This is what we'll talk about.
Yeah, we had a good work session tonight.
Yeah, exactly what this was. But I don't want to let it drift too far into being a public
Do I
hearing.
have to say that?
I'm just getting some additional feedback from the audience. Number and locations of order panels, and hours of operation. My suggestions is number and locations of order panels is really a permit process, site-specific permit process. These are likely going to be on the side or the rear of the building.
Yeah, we can negotiate them with the
Right.
Bayard.
Hours of operation, we don't regulate any hours of operation in zoning currently.
And we probably
In
don't have
fact,
to.
And we probably don't want to.
So again, I think that's handled as a special permit provision.
I agree.
You know,
Not-
there may
not for
be,
this location.
Sign size.
that's already in zoning, yeah. Those are just my thoughts. I mean, I can fully understand why we wouldn't want 24-hour, but we currently, under zoning, don't regulate.
We don't regulate anything else there.
I would like.
We're unlikely to, yeah, I know, after,
Put a
if this
package
meeting
store.
goes much later, I'm
Yeah.
gonna start wishing.
Well, I would point out, though, that we certainly don't regulate the businesses from operating overnight and night shifts, and that we are promoting amenities to support those businesses.
Yes, so we
The
probably
license
don't
from the
wanna-
selectmen can regulate hours of
Yeah.
operation.
Absolutely.
And I believe they do.
All right, let's consider this one a go for the 13th. What else do we have here?
Just my minutes, I hope.
All right, we have 2 sets of minutes. I will declare that I have read them.
Thank you.
I read them.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, folks. And that being the case, unless somebody wants to spend a lot of time
I'll
reading
make a
them.
motion to approve.
Both at the same time?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Make a motion to approve.
Second,
I got a motion and a second to approve.
Meeting's December 12th and January 9th,
That's correct.
That's correct.
and we had a full board each time, so.
Probably.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's off the
Have
list.
any other business?
Well, the committee report stuff kind of got woven into all the other discussions.
You know, I do have one other thing.
I'm waiting.
You're adjourned.
I wanted to do
We have a
that.
I thought you were gonna say thank you to the board. Thank you for the one and done.
Thank you.